Hello everyone! Crimea isn't just land. It's the pivot of the Ukraine war. Whoever controls this peninsula controls the Black Sea, missile bases and supply lines. Ukraine wants it back, Russia refuses to give it, and the world is watching. Stay tuned as we break down why Crimea could decide the entire conflict and shape the future of Europe. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we are diving into one of the most critical pieces of land in the Ukraine war, Crimea. While the world focuses on Kyiv and eastern Ukraine, Crimea's strategic importance cannot be overstated. Located on the Black Sea, Crimea allows whoever controls it to dominate naval power, trade routes, and military positioning. Russia's 2014 annexation of the peninsula set the stage for the current conflict, while Ukraine views Crimea as a vital part of its national identity. Losing it undermines sovereignty and morale. In this video, we explore Crimea's military, economic, and symbolic importance, and why controlling it could determine the ultimate outcome of the war. From missile launches and naval bases to global grain exports, Crimea affects not only Ukraine and Russia, but the international community. We'll examine the key infrastructure, military deployments, and supply chains that make Crimea critical. By the end, you'll understand why this peninsula is not just a battlefield, but a pivot point of modern warfare, influencing diplomacy, NATO strategy, and global security. Stay with us as we break it all down, section by section. Crimea juts prominently into the Black Sea, giving whoever holds it naval dominance and strategic advantage. Its main ports, particularly Sevastopol, host Russia's Black Sea Fleet, projecting military power across southern Ukraine and the Mediterranean. Control over Crimea allows Russia to disrupt shipping routes and influence trade flows. Beyond naval power, the peninsula is a launchpad for long-range missiles, drones, and surveillance operations. Its proximity to mainland Ukraine makes supply lines, military bases, and energy routes critical and vulnerable, depending on who holds the land. Geopolitically, Crimea acts as a bridge between Europe and Asia, impacting NATO and neighboring countries like Turkey. Analysts say that holding Crimea provides near uncontested regional influence. Historically, Crimea has been a contested zone, making it a flashpoint for both diplomacy and war. Economically, this control affects Ukraine's ability to export grain, impacting global food security. Whoever dominates Crimea can influence the balance of power, shaping military strategies and regional alliances. Every military movement, infrastructure reinforcement, and port usage is closely monitored by international intelligence, highlighting Crimea's extraordinary importance in the conflict. Crimea's military importance is critical for both Russia and Ukraine. Russia has heavily fortified the peninsula with troops, air defense systems, and naval assets. Advanced missile systems can strike deep into Ukrainian territory, giving Moscow a strategic advantage. Control of Crimea allows Russia to support southern operations while blocking Ukrainian advances. The Black Sea Fleet based in Sevastopol provides maritime superiority, disrupts enemy supply lines, and projects power beyond the peninsula. Amphibious operations, missile launches, and intelligence gathering are all coordinated from this strategic hub. Attacks on the Kerch bridge demonstrate the peninsula's vulnerability and symbolic value. For Ukraine, weakening Russian positions in Crimea is a priority, but direct assault remains costly. Crimea's fortifications, airfields, and naval bases make it both a fortress and a target. Analysts emphasize that losing Crimea would severely hinder Russia's southern operations, while regaining it would give Ukraine a major strategic and psychological advantage. Military operations here influence not only local battles, but the broader course of the war, shaping NATO calculations, supply line security, and international military support. Crimea's economy and logistics may seem secondary, but are crucial in the conflict. While not a major industrial hub, the peninsula acts as a military and transport conduit for Russia. The Kerch Bridge connects Crimea to mainland Russia, enabling the movement of troops, ammunition, and essential resources. Disrupting these routes hampers Russian operations, highlighting the strategic importance of infrastructure. For Ukraine, regaining Crimea restores access to ports essential for exporting grain, which affects national revenue and global food markets. Control of Black Sea lanes also impacts international trade, energy transit, and sanction enforcement. Although Crimea requires substantial Russian subsidies, its strategic value outweighs economic costs. Analysts stress that Crimea's worth is not measured in economic productivity, but in control and projection of power. The peninsula allows Russia to maintain influence in southern Ukraine and extend reach into the Mediterranean, affecting NATO's strategy. Even minor disruptions in supply lines can shift the balance of power, demonstrating how logistics, ports, and bridges play a direct role in modern warfare. Crimea is not just a battlefield. It is a supply hub, launchpad, and geopolitical lever, with consequences that extend far beyond Ukraine's borders. Crimea represents more than land. It embodies national pride and historical claims for both Ukraine and Russia. For Ukraine, the 2014 annexation was a deep national trauma. Regaining Crimea would restore sovereignty and boost morale, signaling resilience and determination. For Russia, Crimea symbolizes historical heritage and patriotism, making it politically essential to defend. This symbolism drives military and political decisions, domestic narratives, and diplomatic stances. Leaders leverage Crimea to rally populations, justify operations, and strengthen international positioning. Analysts note that symbolic importance influences strategies as much as military logic. Even minor victories or setbacks in Crimea resonate widely, affecting public opinion, morale, and international perception. The peninsula is a convergence of history, politics, and warfare, making it emotionally and strategically significant. It's not only a geographical advantage, but also a narrative battleground, where both sides project strength and legitimacy. The ongoing struggle highlights how identity, culture, and perception shape the conduct and consequences of modern conflict. Understanding Crimea's symbolic weight is essential to grasp the full dynamics of the Ukraine war and the stakes involved for both nations. The Kerch Bridge is Crimea's lifeline, connecting the peninsula directly to mainland Russia. This massive structure ensures continuous movement of troops, vehicles, ammunition, and supplies. For Russia, it is critical to maintain control over Crimea's defense and logistics. Any disruption to the bridge, through strikes or sabotage, slows reinforcements, weakens supply lines, and undermines military operations. Ukraine views the bridge as a high-value target, and attacks against it have symbolic as well as strategic significance. Beyond the Kerch Bridge, Crimea's roads, ports, and rail networks form a web of strategic choke points. Controlling these points allows Russia to project power effectively, while limiting Ukraine's operational flexibility. Analysts highlight that modern warfare increasingly targets infrastructure, and the bridge represents a prime example of how critical supply lines are in conflict. Maintaining these connections allows Russia to sustain its forces and reinforce southern Ukraine, while Ukraine's attempts to disrupt them signal its determination to reclaim territory. The battle over Crimea's infrastructure is therefore not just tactical but central to the broader conflict, demonstrating how control over roads, bridges, and ports can influence the war's trajectory and shift regional power balances. Crimea's control has global consequences far beyond Ukraine. NATO closely monitors the peninsula, as any shift in control affects European security and military balance. The Black Sea is a strategic maritime corridor, influencing naval operations, trade routes, and energy transport. Control over Crimea gives Russia the ability to influence regional alliances and diplomatic negotiations. The United Nations (EU) and other international organizations follow the situation closely, as Crimea impacts sanctions enforcement, humanitarian aid delivery, and international law discussions. Grain exports from Ukraine, essential to global food markets, are affected by Russia's control of Black Sea ports and routes. Analysts view Crimea as a geopolitical pivot. Whoever controls it can shape war negotiations, influence military deployments, and dictate regional security outcomes. Control of Crimea also strengthens Russia's bargaining power in potential ceasefire talks or territorial agreements. International media frequently highlights the peninsula as a barometer of Russia's strength and Ukraine's resilience. The peninsula's fate affects global energy security, shipping lanes, and trade dynamics, making it a focal point for policymakers and military strategists worldwide. In short, Crimea is not just a battlefield. It is a global strategic hotspot with far-reaching consequences for diplomacy, economics, and security. Currently, Crimea remains under Russian control, heavily fortified with troops, air defense systems, and naval deployments. Ukraine has launched targeted strikes, testing defenses and signaling intent to reclaim the peninsula. Satellite imagery and intelligence reports show constant military activity, including troop rotations, missile launches, and reinforcement of key infrastructure. Analysts note that Crimea's fortifications make a direct Ukrainian assault costly, hence the focus on disruption, precision strikes, and asymmetric tactics. Russia continues to expand its air defense coverage, strengthen naval bases, and secure strategic choke points. Ukraine's attempts to damage supply lines, infrastructure, and military installations demonstrate a calculated approach to weaken Russian control without incurring unsustainable casualties. The ongoing situation highlights Crimea as a center of high-stakes tension, a place where military, political, and symbolic factors converge. Each engagement, strike, or logistical maneuver impacts not only local front lines, but also broader operational planning across southern Ukraine. Observers emphasize that controlling Crimea affects morale, international perception, and strategic calculations. Even limited successes in disrupting Russian operations can shift momentum and influence negotiations. The current dynamics show why Crimea is central to the war's trajectory. serving as both a fortress and a focal point for conflict escalation. The future of the war could hinge on Crimea. If Ukraine regains control, Russia loses naval dominance, key supply lines, and international leverage, shifting the strategic balance in Ukraine's favor. Conversely, if Russia maintains control, Ukraine faces prolonged conflict, limited Black Sea access, and constrained options for offensive operations. Analysts propose several scenarios: ongoing attritional warfare, targeted infrastructure strikes, or negotiated settlements. Each scenario carries political, economic, and military consequences. Regaining Crimea would boost Ukrainian morale, strengthen sovereignty, and improve access to critical ports, while also impacting global grain exports and European security. Conversely, Russian control strengthens their southern front, allowing continued influence over maritime trade and regional diplomacy. Crimea's control could redefine NATO's posture, affect military deployments, and influence international negotiations. Policymakers around the world view the peninsula as a barometer of the conflict's trajectory. Analysts stress that Crimea is not just a geographic prize, but a strategic lever capable of altering the war's outcome. The peninsula remains a central point where military operations, diplomacy, and international perception intersect, making its fate one of the most significant determinants in the Ukraine conflict. Understanding the stakes in Crimea is essential to grasp the broader implications for regional and global security. Crimea is more than a peninsula. It is the key that could decide the Ukraine war. Its military, economic, and symbolic significance makes it central to both Russian and Ukrainian strategies. Control of Crimea affects Black Sea dominance, missile positioning, supply lines, and regional influence. For Ukraine, regaining it would restore sovereignty, improve access to ports, and boost morale. For Russia, holding it maintains strategic leverage, influence over southern Ukraine, and historical claims. The peninsula also affects international trade, energy routes, NATO strategy, and global food security, making it a critical focal point for policymakers and analysts worldwide. Understanding Crimea's importance allows viewers to see the war beyond frontline battles. It is a convergence of strategy, symbolism, and geopolitics. Whether Ukraine retakes the peninsula or Russia maintains control will shape not only the conflict's immediate outcome, but also the broader regional and international security landscape. If you found this video useful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth war analysis. Hit the bell icon to get notified whenever we post our next video. Staying informed is crucial in understanding today's complex geopolitical world. And Crimea's fate is one of the most important stories unfolding right now.